I pushed open the front door and was hit by the sharp tang of paint before I even dropped my bag. My shoes were still damp from the rain outside, my arms heavy from a 12-hour shift at the diner. But what I saw made the ache vanish in a single jolt of disbelief. Two men in overalls stood in my bedroom, rollers sliding up and down the walls. I had painted peach just months ago. My floral curtains lay crumpled on the floor, speckled with drops of white. The dresser I'd sanded and refinished on weekends sat shoved to the center of the room, streaks of paint already marking its varnish. My breath stuck in my throat. What's going on? Bianca leaned against the doorway, arms crossed, lips curled into a smile I knew too well. It was the smile she wore when she thought she was clever. "Oh, Elara," she said lightly. "You're home early. We're just doing some renovations before we move in. Thought we'd surprise you." Her tone was casual, as if she were commenting on the weather, as if these walls were hers to change. The younger painter froze mid-stroke and glanced at me apologetically. But Bianca didn't flinch. My legs felt unsteady beneath me. For months, this house had been my promise to myself, my proof that years of overtime and saving meant something. And here she was, treating it like a canvas for her plans. I wanted to shout, to demand an explanation, but all that came out was a strained whisper. "Move in." Bianca tilted her head, smug and certain. "You'll see. It'll be better this way." The smell of wet paint swirled around me, and my chest tightened as if the air itself were closing in. I realized then this was only the beginning. The words, "move in," clung to me like wet clothes. And as I stood in that ruined room, my mind slipped backward to the path that had led me here. For years, I had lived paycheck to paycheck, clocking in before dawn at the diner on Lancaster Drive, the kind of place where the neon sign never turned off, and the smell of fryer oil clung to your skin even after a shower. After each shift, I'd scrape together tips, count out quarters from the register I'd worked, and slide whatever was left into a small envelope I kept hidden in my closet. Student loans took their cut first, then rent on the showbox apartment I shared with a leaky ceiling and paper-thin walls. Utilities, groceries, the bus pass each month felt like bleeding out slowly, but I learned how to stretch $1 until it bent. Nights off weren't for rest, but for side gigs, busting tables at catered events, scrubbing kitchens for extra cash, even babysitting when I could. Some weeks I thought the savings would never matter, but I kept at it. When friends bought new clothes, I patched mine. When co-workers ordered takeout, I packed leftovers in reused containers. Every sacrifice had a purpose. Then on my 26th birthday, I signed the papers for a weathered bungalow on the north side of Salem. It wasn't much, 2 bedrooms, a patch of yard, peeling paint on the siding, but it was mine, paid with every dollar I had fought to keep. I remembered standing in the empty living room, listening to the silence, realizing I had finally bought myself a kind of freedom no one could evict me from. Or so I thought. And now with Bianca's voice echoing through the hall, that freedom felt like it was slipping through my hands. After that first shock, Bianca began appearing more often, never calling ahead, just sliding into my weekends as if she were entitled to the space. At first, she brought coffee or a bag of groceries, presenting herself as thoughtful, but the conversations always turned sharp. "You're what? 27, she said one Saturday, surveying the half-painted trim I'd been working on. "You're too young to manage all this responsibility. Houses aren't like apartments, Elara. They eat money, and you don't even know what you're getting into." I swallowed back the words I wanted to say, that I had worked every hour for this place, that I'd counted pennies and walked home in the rain to save on bus fare. Instead, I found myself staring at the chip paint on my brush, wondering if maybe she was right. Other times, she circled the subject of my job. "Still at that diner, honey? How long do you think you can keep that up? What if you get sick? What if something happens?" The way she said it made my hands clench, because I had asked myself those same questions late at night, lying awake under the hum of the refrigerator. When Julian, her husband, came along, he didn't bother with the soft tone. He stepped into the living room and announced, "This place would run better if we helped manage it. You've never owned property before. Mistakes cost money, and we could save you from that." I laughed nervously, but inside I felt a pit open. Their visits left me drained, second-guessing choices I'd been proud of just days before. Was the mortgage too much for me? Was the roof worse than I realized? Was I selfish for wanting to do this on my own? By the time they left, I no longer felt like the owner of my own house. I felt like a tenant waiting for approval. And when Bianca slipped her hand into mine at the door, squeezing with false warmth, I realized I couldn't tell if she was offering comfort or tightening her grip. One Friday evening, I came home late from the diner, my hands raw from scrubbing pans, and noticed the couch wasn't where I'd left it. It was angled toward the window instead of the television. A stack of my cookbooks sat in a neat row on the coffee table, as though someone had been curating them for display. My first thought was that I was too tired, that maybe I had shifted things around and forgotten. But the next morning, the kitchen confirmed the truth. My spices had been reorganized into matching jars, labels turned forward like a store shelf, pots I kept within reach were shoved into higher cabinets. Even my coffee mugs, each chipped but precious, were stacked in the wrong order. The air smelled faintly of Bianca's perfume, the one she wore when she wanted to seem put together. The realization sank in. She had been inside without me. I checked the doors, but nothing looked forced. That's when the memory hit 2 weeks earlier. Bianca had asked if she could run out to her car and needed my keys to grab something she'd left behind. She must have copied them then. When she stopped by the next weekend, she was all smiles. "You really should let me help you keep this place organized. It's too much for you alone." She wandered into the kitchen, picked up my phone from the counter, and said she needed to check something for a recipe she texted me. She tapped and swiped for longer than made sense, laughing when I asked what she was doing. "Don't be paranoid, Elara. You're so uptight about your things." Her words lingered after she left. The house no longer felt solid. Every time I turned a corner, I wondered what else she had touched, what else she planned to rearrange. I wanted to demand my keys back, to tell her this was my house, not hers. But the thought of her reaction made my stomach twist. Instead, I locked the door behind her and stood in the hallway, staring at the key ring in my hand, knowing it wasn't the only set anymore. After discovering the truth about the keys, I stopped trusting my own memory. Each morning before leaving for work, I began snapping photos with my phone how the couch faced, where the coffee mug sat, the way my shoes were lined up by the door. At night, I compared the pictures to what I found when I returned. Some days nothing had changed. Other days a book would be missing from the shelf or the curtains would be tied differently. I wrote it all down in a small spiral notebook I kept under my mattress. The act gave me a strange calm. If Bianca wanted to rewrite my house, at least I would keep a record of the original draft. One evening after a double shift, I told Sophia, the server I'd worked alongside for years. We were wiping down counters when I finally said it. "My sister's in my house when I'm not there. She copied my keys." Sophia's eyes narrowed. "Elara, that's not just family drama. That's trespassing. You need someone in your corner." I shrugged, embarrassed. Who's going to believe me? It's just her word against mine. But Sophia wasn't the type to shrug. The next day, she scribbled a name and number on a napkin. Jensen, housing lawyer in Portland. My cousin used him when her landlord tried something shady. "Call him." I tucked the napkin into my pocket, turning it over between my fingers all shift. The idea of involving a lawyer made my stomach tighten, but it also felt like a door I hadn't realized I could open. That night, Sophia surprised me again. She handed me a small brass keychain, the kind sold in gas stations. Etched across it in bold letters was one word: boundaries. "Put your house key on that," she said. "So every time you use it, you remember whose lock it really is." The weight of the brass in my palm was heavier than its size. I clipped my key onto it and slipped it into my pocket, holding it there as if it might anchor me against the storm I knew was coming. It was a gray Sunday afternoon when the pounding came at my door. I opened it to find Bianca on the porch, 2 duffel bags at her feet, her kids fidgeting behind her. Julian stood at the bottom of the steps with his arms folded, watching like a sentry. "We need to move in," Bianca announced, brushing past me as if the decision had already been made. "The landlord gave us 3 days to leave. We've got nowhere else." I blocked her before she could cross the threshold. "This is my house. You can't just show up and decide you live here." Her smile cracked, replaced by the edge I knew too well. "Elara, don't be selfish. We're family. You have 2 bedrooms and the kids need a roof over their heads. Are you really going to turn them away?" The children shifted uncomfortably, sensing the tension, but not understanding it. My chest tightened, but I held my ground. "I'm not turning them away. I'm saying you can't move in here. There are other options. You can find another place. Ask Julian's family. Anything, but not here." Bianca's voice rose loud enough for the neighbors to hear. Listen to her. After all I've done for you, after everything our family's been through. She slams the door on her own sister. Across the street, Miss Chen peeked through her curtains and two men walking their dog slowed their steps. My face burned, but I forced myself to meet Bianca's glare. You've crossed too many lines already, I said. Steady now. This is my home. I won't let you take it. For the first time, her eyes flickered with something other than confident surprise, maybe even fear that her performance wasn't working. She grabbed one of the bags, motioning sharply for Julian and the kids to follow. This isn't over, she hissed, her voice low, but meant for me alone. Then she turned and marched down the steps, her words still echoing in my ears long after the sound of their car faded from the street. Inside, I pressed my back against the door, heart pounding, and knew that refusing her once meant she would only return stronger. The next confrontation didn't happen on my porch. It came in the form of folded papers shoved into my hands when Bianca showed up 2 days later, smug and unhurried as if nothing had passed between us. Look, she said sweetly, too sweetly. I just want to clear things up. I unfolded the papers. Printed screenshots of text messages stared back at me, each stamped with my number. Come live with me, Bianca. The house is too big for one person. Bring the kids. We'll figure it out together. My throat went dry. These aren't mine. She tilted her head, pitying. You must have forgotten. You've been so stressed working all those shifts. People slip sometimes. Then came another stack receipts for a bedroom set, a television, even kitchenware. Each purchase bore my bank account number, the same account I had dipped into sparingly, the one I thought only I had access to. You're welcome, by the way, she said. I made improvements that benefit us all. The lie lodged in my chest like a thorn. After she left, I sat at my kitchen table staring at the evidence of a life I hadn't chosen. Had I been careless with my phone? Had she guessed my password? The more I thought about it, the more the edges blurred between what I remembered and what I might have overlooked. Rumors started floating back to me through neighbors and coworkers. Miss Chen asked if I was feeling all right, mentioned that Bianca had told her I was forgetting things. At the diner, a busboy joked about how I left my apron behind twice last week. Bianca must have amplified that too. By the end of the week, I caught myself checking my own notebook, rereading the lines I had written just to be certain they were true. For the first time, I wondered if maybe she was right, if maybe I was losing track of more than I realized. But when I looked at the brass keychain Sophia had given me, cool and solid in my hand, I knew I couldn't let that doubt be the final word. I carried the forged texts and receipts to Portland, hands trembling as I slid them across the desk to Mr. Jensen. He was calm, gray-haired, the kind of man who spoke only after weighing every word. He studied the papers, then glanced at me. These messages aren't genuine, he said, tapping one with his pen. Metadata doesn't lie. There are markers of an app-generated conversation. If she presents these in court, we can dismantle them. The knot in my chest loosened slightly, but only slightly. She's already spreading stories that I'm unstable. People believe her. That's why you need more than your word. Document everything. Photos, dates, times, witnesses, 2 neighbors who saw the porch argument, co-workers who can vouch for you. It all matters. I nodded, clutching my notebook tighter. He leaned forward. And one more thing. Change your locks immediately. Every door. Every entry. Do not wait. That night, I barely slept, turning over every sound in the house, imagining Bianca slipping in with her copy. At dawn, headlights swept across my yard and a battered pickup rolled to a stop. Sophia's brother-in-law, Leo, stepped out with a toolbox. He worked quickly, hands sure, moving from the front door to the back gate, then the side entry I rarely used. I watched each old lock drop into his bucket like dead weight. When he pressed the new brass keys into my palm, their edges cool and sharp, I felt a flicker of control return. You'll want 3 sets, he said. One for you, one backup somewhere safe, and one with someone you trust. I slipped one onto the keychain Sophia had given me. The word boundaries gleamed in the early light. For the first time in weeks, I felt the house tighten back around me like a door finally shut against a storm. But I also knew storms didn't disappear just because you latched the windows. At T6 the next morning, fists rattled the front door hard enough to shake the frame. I opened it to find 2 officers on the porch. Bianca, standing behind them with a folder clutched to her chest and triumph in her eyes. Miss Hale, one officer said, we've received a complaint. Your sister claims you're holding her belongings and preventing her access to the property. Bianca stepped forward, flipping open the folder. She invited us to live here. I have the texts. She just forgets. She handed them the same forged messages I'd already shown Mr. Jensen, each line dripping with a version of me that didn't exist. My hands shook, but I forced myself to speak. Those are fake. This house is mine, and I never gave permission. I fetched the folder I'd prepared the deed with my name alone, printed photos showing furniture moved without consent, and my notebook filled with dates and details. The officers looked unconvinced, glancing between us when headlights cut across the yard. Mr. Jensen stepped out of his car, briefcase in hand. He greeted the officers calmly and asked to examine Bianca's printouts. This is fabricated, he said after a minute, pointing to the inconsistencies. The metadata shows it was generated by a third-party app. If this goes further, the forgery itself could be prosecuted. The officers stiffened. One turned to me. Do you want these items removed from the house now under supervision? Yes, I said, my voice steadier than I expected. For the next hour, Bianca and Julian carried their suitcases and boxes out under the officers' eyes. The bedroom set they'd bought with my stolen money went too, piece by piece, until the house stood bare of their presence. When the patrol car finally rolled away, silence fell heavy and clean. I stood at the window, brass key warm in my hand, knowing the final word hadn't yet been spoken. The morning after the police left, I walked through each room slowly, letting the quiet settle into my bones. For the first time in weeks, there were no unfamiliar footsteps, no perfume lingering in the air, no furniture shifted from its place. It was just me and the house I had fought for. I didn't waste time. That same week, I filed for a restraining order with Mr. Jensen's help. The paperwork was exhausting, but I signed each page with a steady hand. At night, Leo returned to install a small camera by the front door and another near the back gate. Watching the screens glow on my phone gave me a strange comfort. The house was no longer open ground. It was mine to defend. Sophia came by with bags of potting soil, and together we planted daisies and lavender along the walkway. I knelt in the dirt, pressing roots into the earth, feeling something loosen inside me with each handful of soil. This was my line drawn in petals and stems, my proof that beauty could grow even after intrusion. When the garden was done, I went inside and hung the brass keychain Sophia had given me on a nail in the kitchen wall. The word boundaries gleamed against the paint. I stood there for a long time, staring at it, remembering how small and fragile I had felt when Bianca first crossed my threshold. Now, at 27, I understood that independence wasn't guaranteed by a deed or a set of locks. It was a choice I would have to defend again and again. Fragile, yes, but still mine. When freedom arrives too early, do you protect it with fear or with pride?